I want to take a moment to talk about job hopping, how to do it properly, what are the benefits, and just make sure that people can approach it in a smart way. So, we're living in a time where a lot of people are job hopping or boomeranging or whatever else you want to use to describe it. Essentially, people are joining companies, they're getting trained, they work for a little bit, and then they leverage that job and those responsibilities for more money at a competing company, a higher title, sometimes both, and sometimes they even negotiate some perks, benefits, relocation, um, signing bonus, etc. So there's a lot of negative sentiment out there. People try to argue against it. People say it's harmful to you, it's toxic, it's dishonest. I have a lot of people who have said it's dishonest somehow, it's deceptive, it's um, just a bad, toxic habit that will hurt people later. I'm a huge supporter of it, but I first want to go over maybe the different views people have on it, and then also how to approach job hopping in a smart way. So there are merits to both sides of the argument, right? So people who are for, say, people who job hop, they increase their salary a lot quicker than people who stay at companies, which is factual. There's so much data to support it. And as a data practitioner myself, I love looking at data. I love graphs and charts and all these different mediums. And I can tell you, I've looked at the information. People who job hop, their salaries go up infinitely higher, as well as their titles, than people who stay at companies long term and just try to hustle or grind their way to the top. So in terms of finances as well as just title inflation, job hopping is the way to go. On top of that, people who job hop tend to be better appreciated in their companies. They're better appreciated because they're seen as, I don't want to say a consultant, but sort of a new resource, right? When you go to a new company, you're bringing new methodologies, new ways of thinking, new ways of working. You're more appreciated in the workplace. People who job hop, they're better appreciated in the workplace because their employers know that this person has a diverse background and they're going to leverage that background to add value to our company. Versus, the employees we already have, they only know our ways of working. They only know our procedures. And guess what? If there's some flaws in the ways we work, the employee I've had here for years, he's only going to know how to do things our way. Versus this new employee who I'm going to appreciate and be grateful for because they are a new resource and they're going to help us improve. So job hopping is better for salary, it's better for title, and it's also better just in terms of having uh, a better work-life balance, being appreciated at work, being seen and viewed as a resource, being treated as an asset, right? People want to be treated a certain way, and job hopping can actually get you to a point where you get the appreciation, the recognition that you deserve, versus employees who have been at a single company for a while. They're sort of seen as just these they're not seen as a flight risk, right? Companies will be nicer to someone if they know that they could leave versus someone they know definitely isn't going to leave. So those are some of the good things about job hopping. But some of the, I don't want to say bad things, but some of the counterpoints that have been made that I sort of agree with. So one is job hopping will hurt you eventually. That's a fact. It will hurt you eventually, but people try to nip it in the bud. I disagree with that. I think you should job hop until you can. My advice to people is until you hit 30, you should be job hopping every year. In fact, your first few years after college or early 20s, you should be job hopping maybe every 6 to 12 months, and then try to do a full year until you hit 30. Now, once you hit 30, try to do maybe 2 to 3 years. Probably 3 years is better until you hit 35. Then 35, you definitely want it to be 3 years for sure, right? Then once you hit 40, you probably want to start putting in about 5 years. And as you can see, the trend, like the older you get, the less often you want to be jumping ship because it can hurt you. I do not like this sentiment, however, where if you job hop maybe once, right? You get a job after college, you leave after 6 months for something else. People start making all sorts of points that, oh, you're burning bridges. Oh, this is going to look so bad on your I don't know. Like some people are convinced there's a permanent record out there. It's nonsense, right? Just approach it intelligently. Can job hopping hurt you? Yes, but truthfully, treat it just treat it in a way where you have a good schedule and you're only job hopping as often as it makes sense or as often as it's healthy to do, right? Another thing people say is, oh, if you keep job hopping, you never put down roots, you never sort of get to know people in a meaningful way, build those relationships. Look, networking happens. I have people I've met at one conference, like ServiceNow CreatorCon. I met them, and we are, lifetime acquaintances or colleagues. So this idea that, oh, if you keep job hopping, you're never going to sit down roots, and it's going to hurt you. You'll always be the outsider, right? If you're always job hopping, you're always a new guy in the workplace. You'll never know anyone long term. And then someday if you need a favor, or you need a job, you won't be able to ask anyone because you only met everyone or worked with them for a few months. I don't wholly agree with that, right? It might hurt some people who aren't good with networking, who aren't good with keeping in touch or communicating positively with their coworkers. But that just seems to be another, a myth. Same as, oh, job hopping will hurt you if you do it once or twice. That's it. You're blacklisted. No, that's really not it. It will hurt if you keep trying it into your 30s and 40s. You're leaving every half year or 1 year. But again, people approach it pretty intelligently, from my experience, and it's a good thing to do. I recommend it. Especially early in your career, because forget about the monetary aspect, right? Forget about moving from business analyst to senior analyst, or um, software engineer to senior engineer. Forget about moving up in title. Forget about moving up in compensation. Early in your career, you're a lot more flexible, just mentally and physically. It's a great time to learn. Go throughout different companies, learn different ways of working, because uh, different companies have different operating procedures. They approach problems in different ways. And when you learn 4 to 5 strategies for how to solve different problems, maybe how to handle departments, um, it makes you an asset. And as you get older, a lot of this knowledge is going to come in handy. For example, I've seen companies that have a centralized PMO office, right? They have a centralized office with all the project managers, and whenever there's a project, this matrix team is assembled, or a project manager is borrowed, and engineers or analysts are borrowed and assigned to a project, and you have cybersecurity guy involved somewhere. I have seen that, and then I've also seen companies where they have matrix teams that are permanent. So they have a project manager who has a team of developers, and there might be an analyst, there might be an intern, there might be a cybersecurity person, um, there might even be a product owner, sometimes a scrum master, which is interesting. Um, and those companies thrive. They just have project after project assigned to these teams that are just this mixed bag. So if I didn't work in these different companies, I wouldn't know that there are some cases where centralized, PMO makes sense, and kind of having dedicated departments makes sense. And then um, I wouldn't know that there's also scenarios where having these matrix teams makes sense, right? Having the project manager embedded in the team versus kind of, belonging in a centralized PMO. Um, by rotating throughout different companies as a consultant or even as a permanent employee, I learned these things. I learned when it makes sense. I learned the benefits. It has to be very specific instances where one works over the other, because not all companies benefit from a centralized PMO. Not all of them benefit from matrix teams, right? It can be a mess if people don't really know how to structure it from a management perspective, or how to make good processes in place work. So job hopping is really good. You learn different practices, you learn different things, ways of working, and you come up with new ideas, and also new ways of approaching ideas, of approaching problems. So if it isn't clear by now, you should job hop if you can, and just constantly, milk all the benefits. When it comes to job hopping, though, just one thing to note: I have seen people who try to job hop to roles that are very lateral. And what I mean by lateral is, you'll have an analyst, who has 3 years of experience, or, oh wait, sorry, back up. you'll have an analyst with like 6 months or a year of experience, and they're applying to a job that's very similar to theirs, with similar requirements, similar JD, job description, and they'll apply to that job, and then they get it, and then they're only making like $2,000 more. Um, if you do job hop, right, try to collect some deliverables, try to get onto some high visible, maybe risky projects. Have something to talk about so that your value is a little bit more. Don't job hop for just a few $1,000s. If you job hop, it should be for like a 10+% raise. It's not very intelligent unless there's a lot of other factors to consider. But don't ever do it just for a small raise, because then again you're stuck there for half a year or a year until you can safely job hop again without putting this blip on your resume. So job hopping is good. Just approach it intelligently. Um, get more money, get higher titles, learn new practices. It's really just beneficial. The only thing is just execution, and also just trying to stay focused, not listening to people who say you're not putting down roots or you're not building relationships. You're seen as a flight risk. A lot of those things really don't factor in until much later in your career.